Thanks for the talk, Candice. So I was just wondering how that British team performed, because your results seem to suggest that they were overtraining. So that's, I was just wondering if there was a change in performance. Did they feel that they performed less than expected, or did they end up performing better than expected? Because there must have been some reason they went on this 9-week intensive performance, intensive training regime.
Right. These athletes were, they were training for the championships that were upcoming, right? Now, it's funny that you say they were overtrained. And actually, they weren't overtrained because the pre-post assessment shows there was an increase in the VO2 max values for both males and females, a significant increase. Now, what they were functionally overreached, which means that they were allowed to, they were given a stimuli, the training loads, right? There was an acute decrement in performance and then an increase in performance, and their performance level increased across time. So they were functionally overreached, not overtrained. And the results of the VO2 max test, which is an indicative performance, indicative marker of increased performance levels, was shown between the pre and the post assessments that there was an increase in performance. So their performance levels increased as a result of the 3 training blocks that occurred. But what it showed was that there was an acute decrement in performance, functional overreaching, occurring throughout the 9-week period. One of the things that, that has to be taken into consideration, no athlete or any coach is going to allow a study that is going to allow an athlete to reach an overtrained state. They're not going to allow that, because that is something contraindicated in that sense, because it's to the detriment of the athlete's health. But what we were able to do is determine that they were functionally overreached and apply a training load accordingly. Their performances at the championship levels, there are 2 persons who are going to the 2 athletes within the team. They are going to the Winter Olympics in Sochi. I don't want to... Sochi. Right, Sochi, in probably 6 weeks from now, when it's going to think. So they're doing really well. Their performances have improved significantly.
Yeah, please.
Stan Patino again, student. A question again to Ms. Thomas. A very good presentation. Thank you very much for that. My question is that you did 2 sort of tests that were used to check the fatigue levels, that is the resting heart rate and then this orthostatic heart rate test. These days, sometimes coaches and managers use the RPE, because sometimes the RPE is sometimes a much better gauge in terms of testing because of the high work ethic, particularly of high performance athletes. They push themselves much faster. And maybe I don't know what your thoughts are on that in terms of the real perceived effort as a method in terms of testing fatigue.
The RPE, which is the rate of perceived exertion, right? It's a tool that many coaches can use, but it's a subjective tool because it takes into consideration an athlete's subjective indication of what they perceive the intensity of the workout was. Now, when it's used subjective tool that indicates from the get-go, an athlete can indicate, oh, this was easy, or it was too hard, you understand? So that in itself creates an issue. So that doesn't make it the most objective method to use. But it's a very, very valuable method that is used. I think many coaches do use it, and I use it as well to determine an athlete. Because you have to constantly always maintain that communication with an athlete. How was it? This, that, the other. And from there, you're able to determine either pull back or put more, as the case may be. So it's a very great tool to be used, but it's not an objective tool. So it should be used in conjunction with all other markers. And it was used to determine the training load through the TRIMP indices in this project. Yes?
Hi again. Staying on the heart rate, what percentage of the heart rate would we train kids, 5 to 9, and adolescents, as we leave, 11 plus, and athletes, because we train different heart rates. So just shed a little light so that coaches will be able to understand resting heart rate, working heart rate, maximal heart rate, and what are the percentages that we ideally want to train them and stay within?
All right, I'm just trying to get the question, so I'll just repeat, right? You're indicating, like, what is the ideal, like, for instance, resting heart rate levels that a coach should take into consideration when dealing with athletes, as well as... Sorry?
Your resting heart rate will always remain your resting heart rate, as when you're at rest.
Yeah, but it changes across time.
So that transition between resting heart rate and maximal, you're working.
Oh, okay, understand.
What percentage will we train each entity? Ideally should train.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, I understand what you're saying. Well, that's a complicated question from the perspective of it's dependent upon what is the objective of your training session. If I'm looking to do a speed endurance training session or a speed training session or a general endurance training session, the intensity of the workout changes because I'm seeking to achieve a different objective at the end of the day. So it varies from time to time. I think what the more important aspect is the training load and the volume, in the sense of the volume of this training load, which it would be different for an elite athlete as in compared to a youth athlete. And that needs to be taken into consideration. But that's a whole different area in itself. But I think more importantly, I think what coaches need to take into consideration, because each athlete individually, each athlete will have a different resting value and will have a different maximal value. Right? So more importantly, they have to know what is the objective of the training session, and from there they are able to determine, okay, what am I seeking to do? So if I'm going for speed, I know it's 100%. So I expect the athlete to reach to their maximal heart rate, right? But they work that. But what you don't do is 5 days a week you do a speed session, meaning maximal heart rate 5 days a week. So, you know, it comes down to planning, it comes down to periodization, which is a whole other topic in itself. You know, which coaches, I think, I agree with you, should be educated on for the different levels, because what applies to an elite athlete does not apply to a youth athlete. I hope that answers your question, though. Yeah.
Well, if I may add some few words to your presentation, you did mention that this method has not been validated. Right. But I think we have enough data that we can recommend this method, since recent studies show us that there is a strong association between high heart rate variability and good health. And furthermore, there are studies showing us a strong link between survival from a heart attack and heart rate variability. So it means this method can be recommended to sort of monitor the recovery of athletes.
It's a strong word to say, okay, recommended. Yeah, I agree, recommended. But as you indicate, what you just indicated, in clinical studies, there's a lot of research with respect to heart rate variability as it relates to the health of an individual. What there's limited research in is in sport, elite athletes' performance, and that's where research is needed in these areas to validate such a tool, a monitoring tool. Yeah. So I agree with you.
Thank you very much.
Can I just make a comment? Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on her study because, yeah. All right, what's your name, sorry? Safia. No, I was really impressed with the study for the main purpose that, well, I work in the sport company of Trinidad and Tobago, right? And we're, like for instance, currently we always try to do links with universities in order to do research, basically, on things like this, where it indicates what are the level of knowledge as it relates, like, for instance, sport nutrition and so forth. Right? So we were trying to make a link with a foreign university because they indicated to us that they were interested and so forth. I had no idea that right here, they're doing it. So I was really impressed with your study. Yeah, it's really important because the information is not out there. I wish you could do it across sports, because what guides us on what programs to provide for these athletes and to inform their level of knowledge as it relates to these areas is research which indicates what's lacking. So, I mean, great job. I thought it was a great job, and it informed me a lot as it relates to your study. Yeah, that's it.
Good. Just one question, Candice. I was just wondering if the heart rate, or measuring the heart rate variability would allow for pathological conditions of the heart to be measured, especially taking into consideration Akim Adams and other athletes who seem to be physically fit and at their physical peak, and yet some unknown condition comes up, and in the field of play, they collapse. They have a heart failure and they collapse and die, or they're out of commission as an athlete. So I was just wondering if it is that particular test would be able to give some level of indication as to whether an athlete has a particular pathological condition, either congenital or developed over a period of time.
Yeah. I mean, I think, as Dr. Bauer indicated, there's a lot of clinical research which shows like heart rate variability and its effects of identifying certain pathologies, right? But there are lots of methods out there, electrocardiograph and the echocardiograph, and these things are able to pick up those pathologies at the early stage. Yeah, but heart rate variability is most definitely one of the tools that are used within these monitoring tools to indicate those pathologies. Yes, most definitely. Pardon me? No. Heart rate variability in itself, right? Yeah, is used to determine these things. Yeah, it's just not the same necessarily tool as itself, but heart rate variability in itself is used within cardiological studies.
That's, I think, that should be the last question, unfortunately. Our time is out.
Good afternoon, Jason Akwe from YT Youth Training Center. This question is for Ms. Beckford. I wonder why was your study research limited to swimmers? The thing is, we have this thing in Trinidad and Tobago that our athletes don't really recognize nutrition as being an important part of their training. So I wonder why it wasn't done on a broader spectrum than just swimming.
This study was done as my final year project, so I had a strict timeline. So to include athletes from all other sports, I would have gone over my timeline and I would not have been able to finish. So given more time, I would have included more athletes from different sporting disciplines.
So once again, as you can see, a lot of research is being done in athletes here, but unfortunately what I have found out here, because I have been here for more than 1 year with you here in Trinidad, what I have found is that these projects stay in the supervisor's room. They are never published. So, yeah. So as mentioned in the morning, we need these projects need to be published, as it is mentioned among academicians. It's either you publish or you perish. Yeah.
One final comment. I would like to mention that Sophia's project has been accepted for publication in the Journal of Nutrition and Metabolism. So sometime in the next couple of months, probably it will come out, but sometime this year it will be published. It has already been accepted and already gone to print. So we're still waiting for the date, and I